In this video we're going to be looking at the latest release of the Fedora Linux operating system, that is Fedora 18, the so-called Spherical Cow. Now, it's safe to say that this release has come in for a fair amount of criticism on the web, and after a couple of weeks of living with the operating system, this criticism is largely unjustified and based on pre-production releases such as alphas and betas. In addition, the very long wait and multiple delays of this particular release of the software has probably contributed to users' expectations being ratcheted up and them expecting something extremely special, and so they found the final release somewhat underwhelming when it was actually finally delivered. There are a number of issues that users should be aware before they go ahead and install Fedora 18. Firstly, the security by default seems to be locked down extremely tightly, and so we see a tightening of things like the firewall rules and also the SE Linux rules for privileges used by processes on the new operating system have been tightened, and so you tend to see a lot more alerts popping up about security on the desktop. Thirdly, all support for proprietary formats such as Flash, MP3 or MP4 have been removed from the core Fedora release. So that means that you're going to have to go to a third-party repository such as RPM Fusion before you can have a usable system. And that's going to put a lot of first-time Linux users off. Okay, so what are the actual changes on the Fedora 18 desktop? Well, the main change is in the activities area. If you go up to the activities link and click on it, you'll see that we no longer have the two buttons at the top for activities and applications. So by default, when you click on the activities link or you click on the super key, otherwise known as the Windows key, the default view that comes up is now the Windows view here. So obviously you can navigate between all the open windows on your system here, and indeed your additional workspaces here. You can see I've got 3 open here. In addition, you have access to your favorites. Okay, now if you actually want to look for an application now, what you have to do is you have to come down to this bottom icon on your favorites and click on that. Okay, so this now brings up your software view. So again, we've got the categories down the side here that you can browse through by clicking on here, or additionally you can go back and search for the application that you're looking for. So for instance, let's have a look for Banshee. Okay, so Banshee is not installed, but as it happens we happen to have the alternative rhythm box. So to come out of that, you can click back on the super key to come back to the desktop. And that is that. So that's really the only change to the activities area. So when you click on the activities, you get your Windows view, and in order to get the software view, we click on this new icon down here. Okay, across the top line, we've still got our menu bar. Again, in the middle, we've got our calendar where we've got access to our schedule. Click back on that to remove it. We've got our accessibility menu, we have our volume menu, we have our network menu, and we have our user menu. Now the only one that's changed here is the user menu, and there's a couple of options missing. As you can see, now they've made the power off option the default, and then if I hold down the Alt key it changes to suspend. It was the opposite way round in previous releases. It was suspend and you had to hold down the Alt key to power off. So those are the only changes to the desktop. So you can now see why users who were expecting something more from Fedora 18 were a little bit disappointed there. So what other quirks have we found in the system? Well, one of them we found here is if you maximize a window, so let's maximize this one now, it will dock to the top of the screen now. Well, that's fine, but then you've now not got the title ribbon to right click on to actually minimize or to resize the window. So you end up with this strange combination where a maximized window can be stuck and can't be resized. However, there is a way around this, but you have to use a key combination. If you use the super key and down, you will actually resize the window down. Super key and up maximizes it, and super key down arrow takes it back to its normal size. You can also use super key left to make it occupy the left hand side of the screen, and super key right for the right hand side of the screen. So let's just maximize it for a moment. As you can see here, this is the package manager, and again I think this is one of the areas where people were somewhat underwhelmed when Fedora 18 was shipped, because if anything, the software package handling of Fedora is really under par when you look at comparable offerings from Ubuntu and Mint here. So it's still very much the same package, so I can type in here my package name and just hit enter, and it will go and search its repositories, and it will come back with a number of matches here. And if I want to install this application Banshee, I can just select it here and hit the apply changes, and it will be installed. Likewise, if I have an application that is already installed, say I've got fed up with Rhythmbox and I want to install Banshee instead, I can just uncheck it here and apply the changes to remove it from the system. Okay, I'm not going to do that now. So essentially the software package manager for Fedora 18 looks very similar to those from previous releases. Okay, and I think people were definitely hoping for one of those larger improvements to happen in this particular area. Okay, so we talked about the security being one of the areas that's been tightened up in Fedora 18. So if I type in the IP tables L command, okay, this lists our default firewall rules. You can see now that in Fedora 18, this is the default, I've not changed it at all, we have a huge amount of default rules in here. So if you're running any particular process on here that requires PC to PC communication, then be prepared to spend some time playing about with the firewall rules before it starts to work. One of the other things that you'll see a lot is, as we talked about, Fedora uses the SE Linux system quite heavily to ensure that processes don't run out of control. And again, you're going to see a lot more of these type of notifications where a system process can't access one particular file or another because the rules are so tight. It does give you indications here of how to fix the problem, and it just gives you instructions down here of what you need to do to fix them. But again, it's very much more a hands-on sort of arrangement than you would see in a distribution such as Ubuntu or Linux Mint, where all that sort of stuff is taken care for you and you don't really have to bother about that to get a usable system. Incidentally, you can see here that I've got both minimize and maximize icons on these windows. That's not the default. The default is just the close icon. And if you go onto our website, there are details of how to enable that. If you go into the hints and tips section under Fedora specifics and tweaking the Fedora desktop. So as you can see here, this is the command I use to change the icons on the windows. So, in summary, Fedora 18 is not a bad release. It's just a little underwhelming for most users. There's really not that much over Fedora 17 which would make you want to rush out and install it. I would also add that this is not a release for users new to Linux or who are not comfortable with using the command line and basic system administration. You know, it has taken me around about a week to get this PC into a usable form that I can take forward and use as a standard desktop. And you know, that's not what I expect from a distribution aimed at first-time Linux users such as Ubuntu. Ubuntu took me about a day, if that. But then again, Fedora is not aimed at novice Linux users. It's more for power users who know what they're doing and like to get in there on the command line. So I think that's about it. Thanks a lot for watching.